Hey guys, welcome to episode one of something that I'm planning to do for basically as long as I still enjoy the sport of MMA. And if you can't tell by now, this is a MMA podcast I have been thinking about starting for a while, just mainly because I love the sport so much that I can talk about it about more than the people around me in my life care to hear. So I figured it would probably be a win-win situation if I can just upload me ranting about fights that are coming up, fights I love, fighters that are coming up, and just really me away, really giving me away, sorry, to basically just word vomit and talk about the sport that I love so much. And I figure there's honestly no better way to start it than with this card that is wrapping up the year because UFC 219, by far, one of the cards that I'm most hyped for many reasons. We're going to get into that soon. But just a few things about the podcast. Quality is not going to be the best. I kind of am just starting. I'm recording all audio through a webcam mic, so eventually I'm going to want to get up that upgraded because I do want to eventually have this high quality. Of course, it would be a dream to have like a video setup where I can live stream. Probably start doing it on Twitch. I'm pretty sure they allow that now, which would be super awesome. And I do want to get into stuff like Bellator, boxing, maybe, just tons of combat sports because that's really what I enjoy watching. Starting off with the first episode, though, is probably going to be UFC 219. Well, not probably, it's going to be UFC 219, mainly because I want to work out the kinks. I want to get a little bit better at talking, honestly, before I go more in depth because I don't really do this too often because it is 1 a.m. Nobody can hear me, and I'm just talking into the microphone. But let's get into it, man. So this card is absolutely crazy, and I'm not going to start off just at the beginning of the main card because I want to talk about honestly my all-time most verified. I've been looking forward to this for a while. The moment they announced it, I was on the hype train all the way, and it's going to be Khabib versus Edson Barboza because this to me is such a key fight in the 155-pound division right now because it's been so held up with Khabib missing weight and not being consistent. The whole thing with Conor, doing what Conor does and what he has been doing. It's kind of just putting a stop on it, but I feel like this is going to start solving the many problems that the 50-pound division has right now. Because if he can get through somebody that's a killer like Edson Barboza, and he's been around for such a long time, I feel like that is going to definitely put him into title retention against Tony Ferguson. But the thing that makes this so interesting is Edson Barboza's last loss would be Tony Ferguson. Besides that, he's really beating pretty big names and only losing to killers. Donald Cerrone was his loss 2 losses ago. Then Michael Johnson. Then Tony Ferguson. He's really just kind of been put through the onslaught when he has lost these fights. And Edson Barboza. And if he can beat Tony Ferguson, I think he will probably be next in line for the title shot once Conor and Tony unify. I really think that they probably will unify this year because Conor's already said his next match is going to be MMA, and he's really screwed up so many divisions already. I would really just like him to let this 55 division just continue on because it's so stacked, man. Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson, Michael Johnson, and Khabib. That's all I need to say about that division. Like what? That's absolutely disgusting to me. And whoever wins this fight is honestly just going to start, as I said, unraveling a lot of the problems in this division, especially once Conor and Tony unify. Then I feel like we're just back. And Chael Sonnen said it best, honestly. I feel like the UFCs recently have gotten so much better. Like the Rose Namajunas comeback not comeback, just underdog knockout, 6-1 knockout. The odds were even crazier than that. I feel that Chael Sonnen, when he said that when these stars like your Ronda Rousey's, getting head kicked and then 48 seconds in the cage with Amanda Nunes not clearly ending well, and Conor, going to boxing, making this insane amount of money to where he doesn't have to get hit in the head anymore. It's a very dangerous thing. And he doesn't have to do that. He has the money to say no. But that gives you so much more room for star growth. And I think that's what's starting to happen. And we're starting to see just crazy ecstatic people like not Khabib. I mean, Khabib, by all means, I mean, his Instagram, he's wrestling bears. But people like Tony Ferguson, who are just wild dudes, Kevin Lee, like the Ballers, like that division has so much star power right now, and I just can't wait for the insane fight cards that are going to have these crazy names on it once the 55 division gets sorted out. And I, hands down, can't wait for that fight. And if I want to pick somebody, I want to say, hands down, probably tiramisu. Okay, dead joke. But I want to say I want personally I want Khabib to win because I want to see Khabib Tony. That was so sad when that fight got canceled last second. It was so annoying to me because that would have been because the one thing Tony Ferguson really needs the test of Khabib because Tony Ferguson's insane, but I want to see somebody as technical and as good at wrestling as Khabib is to go against Tony Ferguson to see if he can smother him out. Because Tony Ferguson, I mean, right now he just seems like sort of unstoppable. Like with the way in his last fight with Kevin Lee, how he can opener Kevin Lee when he was being pushed against the cage when he was on the bottom, so Kevin Lee couldn't hit him, even knowing he was in a dominant position. That was crazy. And when Eddie Bravo was talking about that, that was apparently the first time that not Kevin Lee, sorry, Tony Ferguson had ever done something like that. It was the first time, and of course they're going to be using it for a while. And so I want Khabib to win, but Edson Barboza is insane, man. He's so good, 19-4. He's in the 58% knockout ratio, but Khabib's really only been shook once though. What fight was that? I want to say Michael Johnson, honestly. So Michael Johnson shook Khabib, and then Edson wow, Barboza, of course, lost to Michael Johnson. So this is a really MMA maths, of course, don't apply it, but this fight's super interesting. I want Khabib to win, and I'm going to say that I think Khabib will win. And then, moving on to the next fight I wanted to talk about, and I mean, of course, I still am. It's just super sad that it, of course, is not going to happen. That would be the Jimmy Rivera versus John Lineker. And once again, kind of same story with the last fight, like Khabib and Barboza. If John Lineker can beat Jimmy Rivera here and show that he is still there after his last loss with TJ Dillashaw, that's really big for him too. That he can start making very big moves too. He has. I hate using star power so much since I've already used it, 10 times since this podcast has started. But I feel like he has some serious star power too, just because his nickname is Hands of Stone. That is literally what he has, and he's going to get hit and just come at you and not care what you have to throw at him. And I think he definitely could be getting a title shot within 2018 because of course, Cody and TJ probably going to go at it again, and if Cody wins, of course, a third time, because who wouldn't want to see that? That was the craziest fight ever. I gotta admit, I was so emotionally invested in Cody Garbrandt. I wanted him to win so bad, but just the development that you saw in TJ Dillashaw, even from the John Lineker fight, even though he won and absolutely dismantled him, just the development you saw since he's switched camps with Dwayne Ludwig, absolutely insane. He's gotten so much better, and it blows my mind. I can't wait to see him and Cody go at it again because, as I was saying before with the whole star power thing, man, Cody and TJ both, that is such a crazy rivalry, and it has such potential to just explode. And I think it would definitely do real good for the sport to have that rivalry going on because ticket sales, rough. But back to what I was saying about the whole Jimmy Rivera fight with John Lineker. Of course, it did get canceled. John Lineker apparently has an injury of some sort, which is, upsetting because I wanted to see this fight because Jimmy Rivera is a test for John Lineker, but I wanted John Lineker to win because that would put him not in title contention. He would still have some work to do, but he could really start making those moves, and just progressing way more in that division. Okay, so next fight, we're gonna probably go to the main fight now because this one, man, like this card is just so stacked for like the average MMA fans. If you are watching this and wanting to know about this card, even knowing it doesn't seem like there's a lot of huge names on there, one of the coolest cards this year, I think, honestly. Definitely not going to beat the Cody Garbrandt, Rose Namajunas, fucking craziness that happened, but it definitely does have so much potential, and especially if you just want to see some of the highest level of MMA. And talking about the highest level of MMA, the main fight on this card is probably my most, I can't say most anticipated fight of the year because it didn't seem like it was going to get made for a while there. It was on, like, it was on a tightrope there for a minute, but ever since Cyborg was campaigning after the Tonya Evinger fight, I really wanted to see this because Tonya Evinger's super tough, will not quit. She will walk at you like a zombie, but not the most technical, not the best striker, not the person that is going to challenge Chris Cyborg the most. But here's the thing. Who that is a 145-pound female will. Chris Cyborg is on another level. She's a beast. Her striking is insane. It's crazy. But Holly Holm does enjoy occasionally, if you don't remember the infamous Ronda Rousey head kick, like doing the impossible. And if she does, her credentials are pretty insane. Because if you look back at it, okay, she lost to Miesha Tate, but she was a soldier in that fight, man. All 5 rounds. It was going good for her for a while, and then the choke happened. But she went out punching. Like, that is fighter spirit if I've ever seen it on any person alive. Going out punching while you're unconscious. Like, that's especially from a rear naked choke. She was just punching to punch. Like, that takes heart, that takes spirit, and she's a true fighter. And then the Jermaine Durandamy fight, I genuinely thought that she won that fight. I watched it twice, and I feel that, first off, if we're going to go all the way back in this, I'm going to do a little rant. First off, the two simultaneous, was it simultaneous or was it third and fifth round? Don't quote me on that, but it was 2 times where Jermaine Durandamy clearly hit after the bell. And the first strike after the bell, if I remember correctly, was the most damaging strike in the fight up to that point. So, and she didn't get a point deducted, by the way. If you guys have not seen this fight, she did not get a point deduction for 2 in a 5-round championship fight, 2 after the bell strikes. To me, that's a little insane, but all's well that ends well because Jermaine Durandamy ran from Chris Cyborg, and now Holly Holm has a chance to yet again become the champion, which would be insane to me because I don't know how you're going to beat Chris Cyborg. She is insane. Like, she may just be a cyborg. I know that's probably cringe, but I mean, just look at her record. Invicta FC champ. She has done so much work in the division, and she's never really ran into any extreme competition. She blows through people. It's like the scene in Jurassic Park where they're just throwing the carcasses in the cage with the T-Rex, to, show it to the people eating. That's what's going on with Chris Cyborg right now. She's simply just being fed people, and I think that's smart by the UFC because of all the drama that has happened. And I think the way they set up this fight was really smart because they gave Chris Cyborg Tonya Evinger. Let's be real, 1 in 1 million chance Tonya Evinger won that fight, right? It just wasn't very likely. And then sort of the same thing with Holly Holm. I mean, basically the same thing. I'm gonna go ahead and say the same thing. I'm gonna say that they did this on purpose. Probably they gave Holly Holm Beth Carrera, and once again, it was kind of clear because the style that they made for that fight was for Beth to walk into that head kick. That's what was going to happen. That's what they wanted because to get momentum going for both of these fighters, especially in this division where you have a crazy high skill fight going right now. This could be probably the highest skill women's MMA fight that's ever been booked, and I'm just on the hype train for it 100%. This whole card, I am just on the hype train for. This card is disgusting, and who do I think is going to win? That's where it gets weird because, man, I want Holly Holm to win just because if she does, it would be a Cinderella story, really. I mean, she got to the top of the mountain and then ran into a fierce Misha Tate, and of course what happens, and then she worked her way back up, and now if she does the impossible again, takes down, David and Goliath, takes down the Goliath once again. If she does, I think there's argument that she could be the best ever, and especially if her resume continues to just keep growing and growing and growing, I think it's going to be very interesting to watch. I feel like the UFC in these next couple of years, just period, is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger because I feel like Conor leaving honestly helped the sport breathe. Because with Conor being there or being over the UFC, the shadow of him being there kind of put everything to like a semi halt. Holding up two divisions, tons of questions. Will he come back? How are the ratings doing? Fox deal, etc., etc., etc. And then I honestly feel like when Dana White said this, everything went uphill. When Dana White said, look, we're just running the UFC like Conor McGregor is never fighting again. I feel like that was one of the best things he could have done, and I feel like it honestly helped so much because it was just a weight off the shoulders. Like, even if, yes, it's logical that Conor's going to fight again. Yes, he's already stated that he wants to fight again. He's looking for maybe the Nate Trilogy fight, maybe the GSP fight, maybe the Tony Ferguson fight. I really think, what if anything, it's going to be Tony Ferguson because I believe that Conor McGregor is a true man of the sport. He's going to unify the belt. He's going to make sure that there is a 100% tried and true champion in that division, and he's going to hold up that part of the deal at least. And I think MMA fans, and for his legacy, he kind of needs it. Not that he hasn't already done great things, holding two belts simultaneously in two UFC divisions. He's insane. He's, Mystic Mac, predict the future 100%. But I feel like he just needs this to just another check on his checkbook to, being at the top of the mountain and only being halfway up. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what he needs right now. And the UFC not operating like he's never going to fight again is honestly what the UFC needed, because when it comes to the fights that they are now lining up, they are so much better now that nobody's thinking about Conor coming back. They're so much more anticipated. They're getting so much more press. People are writing articles. Francis Ngannou, I could say Francis Ngannou 12,000 times. Like, man, that you can just, if you just simply look at what's been going on in the UFC and look at the stats, look at the news headlines, everything on Twitter, the trending. It's less and less about the one or two superstars in the UFC and more about the UFC as a whole and mixed martial arts as a whole, and everyone just getting better and getting more efficient. And then now these actual stars, not actual stars, Connor's, he is a star and he's a great mixed martial artist, but new stars, new blood coming in, getting famous, pioneering the sport. It is just beautiful to see that. And that's honestly why I wanted to make this podcast, because I want to be a part of this cultivation. Now, I know this first episode honestly probably sucked. And it's just because, I've noticed myself stuttering. I've noticed myself saying, it's going to happen. I just need to get in the groove a little bit more. But I want to be a part of this sport growing, and I want to be able to look back on this channel, look back on this podcast, see how I developed into the MMA community and how the MMA community developed as a whole. And I honestly can't wait for that. Now, there are two more fights on this card still. And when it comes to this fight, Cynthia Calvillo versus Carl Esperanza, I think if anything, Carl Esperanza is probably just going to win because she has so much more octagon time under her belt, and her takedown defense is like something in like the 80s, which is pretty good considering per round. I think Cynthia Calvillo tries to like get like 2 takedowns. So I feel like she's just going to be able to stuff that. But then the more interesting fight, the actual opening fight on this card that I'm pretty excited for would be Neil Magny. Just because Neil Magny has had his last loss have been pretty rough losses, and I feel like he's definitely doesn't deserve to be eighth in the rankings. I feel like, I mean, not 12th, sorry. I feel like he's definitely a top 10 guy, and he definitely has the ability to be top 10. But he's going against Carlos Conduit, who is an insane veteran. His record 40 fights, like compared to Neil Magny's 17 MMA, not 17 MMA fights, sorry, 26 MMA fights. I think Carlos Conduit has experience, but I also want Neil Magny to win this because once again, sort of the thing that's been the trend for this whole podcast recently, the new blood coming in. I feel like Neil Magny has such a better set of modernized tools. Carlos Conduit can pick you apart. He is a monster, that's for sure. But Neil Magny has that young style that I really enjoy. So I want to see him fight, especially the way I can't remember who he did it to, but he basically flattened him with a straight right and I like just boarded him. It was insane. I'm gonna try to look up. I want to say I think it was maybe the Hector Lombard fight, or yeah, Hector Lombard. I want to say that fight was insane, and it will be very interesting to see how the Carlos Conduit Neil Magny fight goes out. But thinking about it, if I had to pick one, I would say just because Neil Magny doesn't have the side of momentum going for him right now, which is a big factor when you're younger into your career. When you're a young kid and you're winning all these fights, you're still, you have so much hunger, and that momentum and that hunger is going to pack up, and it's going to be like a wave, and it's just going to carry you for so long. But there are people, Ronda Rousey, where that one loss kind of stops them. And I don't want to say this is what happened to Neil Magny. I don't think this is what happened to Neil Magny. And he's had 7 losses. He knows how to take a loss. He knows how to come back. He knows how to fight. And I just feel like he's so malleable right now, and he can learn so much more, that he can be one of the best in that division. That's for sure. Especially the welterweight division. Uh, so if anything, I think that is the card basically summed up. I don't think I'll do the prelims or the early prelims for any of them unless it's just a card that really catches my mind. I thought for a second there, I thought Alexei Olenek was fighting on that. And I was about to say, what? That's pretty recent. Ooh, Tim Elliott's in the early prelims, so that's rough. I have the fight card pulled up in front of me, but I think that might be the end for the episode today. Only 25 minutes. Eventually, I'm going to want to keep it longer, especially if there's more fight cards coming on when I'm making these. But for now, this was the first episode of Jacob's MMA podcast. If you guys would like to subscribe or share the video, it would really help me out, and I really appreciate it. But anyways, first episode, guys, bear with me, still learning, and peace.